Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, and viewers from all across the world. And thank you so much for tuning in. Tonight, we're going to have quite a long live stream. We have many topics to talk about. And as usual, I will be opening the space up for all of you for your participation after we discuss the main topics of this live stream. The main subjects that I'm going to be talking about are primarily the preparations. And when I say preparations, we could be talking about 24 to 48 hours. I don't think there is much left in it for Israel. And there are reports saying that they might choose the 7th of October as this big attack on Iran, because they also anticipate that either Hamas or the resistance fronts or Iran might do something on the 7th of October. They are in peak readiness and on high alert before the 7th of October, and it's only 2 days up until the 7th of October. So something could be very imminent when it comes to that. We had the US CENTCOM commander, Michael Kurilla, in Israel. I'm going to be talking about him, the visit, the reports. Of course, they're going to keep many things hidden. They will try and have a big surprise element when it comes to attacking Iran. But what we know for sure is that they are indeed planning to do something very big with Iran. And the United States has their backing. Now, of course, the meeting is the first thing that we're going to be discussing between Yoav Gallant and Michael Kurilla. Previous reports that Biden warned Israel that if they carry out an attack on Iran, they will be interceptions. There will be interceptions from Arab states if it's not coordinated with the United States. But now, clearly, the United States is taking a different approach. And we're also going to be talking about Netanyahu's house being attacked by Fadi missiles coming from Hezbollah. It's not the first time. They previously sent drones to Benjamin Netanyahu's house. Was targeted previously. But we're going to start off with the main article that I wanted to share with you, which is this article on the Israeli newspaper Ynet. Israel is planning a response. Israel is planning a response in Iran. They will pay with interest. They're saying the Iranians are going to be paying with interest. You know, Israelis, they like people paying them with interest. They don't just like the cost on its own. Okay, it's like you escalated it. What are you expecting? And they are also looking at Iraq. Oh, this is something very important. They want to attack Iraq. Israel wants to attack Iraq too. How, where, when, targeted? Is the US going to help them too? They want to attack. Why? Because they reported that 2 of their troops were killed and 25 were wounded, 2 of which were in critical condition after a drone came from the Iraqi resistance on the northern parts of Israel. Sources privy to the details said that Israel is planning a harsh response against Iran and noted that it will be soon. There is tremendous pressure on Tehran, the US warned. It is not easy to destroy nuclear facilities by bombing. Israel did not promise us that it would not attack them. After the UAV that killed 2 soldiers in the Golan, Israel plans to act against the militias in Iraq as well. Like we said the other day, they're planning an all-out war. That's it. They're looking for the greater Israel with the full support and complicity. That's even if they're not working on behalf of the United States administration. American officials estimated last night, Friday, that the Israeli attack on Iran is imminent. Now we've been just speaking about the 24 to 48 hours. The big question is, at this stage, according to them, is what the role of the US will be in the Israeli response to the Iranian attack, which included the launch of more than 180 ballistic missiles into Israel. According to the sources, it does not appear that American planes will participate in the attack, but there will undoubtedly be coordination between Israel and Washington. They noted that this could still change. The US is trying to protect its forces and emphasize that we must not forget the important role of the US in intercepting the Iranian missiles this week. According to the sources, miscalculations can happen. We are definitely trying to make sure that this does not expand into a regional war. It is clear that the US will be dragged into it. They emphasize that we understand Israel's need to respond. You're so generous with them. Why don't you understand Iran's need to respond too? And also referred to the possibility of Israel attacking nuclear facilities. It is not so simple to eliminate Iran's nuclear facilities with one bomb. It's very complex. They noted either way, the American officials made it clear that Israel will do what it has to do, but it also has no desire to be dragged into a regional war. Israel can be calm about one thing. It has our back, and we are coordinating with it. Wow. So all of this talk about, trying to convince them not to attack and not to attack, can you please just put that aside? Tell us that you're making this theater. Most likely the United States will be coordinating and is coordinating and has already finalized the plans when it comes to this attack. We had the US CENTCOM general commander meeting with Yoav Gallant previously, apparently, and a couple of other officials too. Some people are saying that, this meeting hasn't yet happened. Some say, it did happen. But usually when we have these meetings, what happens is they delay the reports when it comes to these meetings so that they do not reveal too much information. However, when we have the American officials, usually that means they will be finalizing everything. Now, the thing is here, Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to have a coalition. But there's a problem. The problem is that no one is seeing eye to eye with him. And now we had a big explosion. What was that explosion? It was Emmanuel Macron. What did Macron say? We need to have an embargo on Israel. Yes, you heard that right. Emmanuel Macron calls for a halt to arms to Israel, but then does a U-turn, reportedly. Let's go through this article and see the Benjamin Netanyahu response. This was reported on the Middle East Eye, and we will share Benjamin Netanyahu and his response afterwards. Okay, Francis Macron calls for a halt to arms sales to Israel, then does a U-turn. French President Emmanuel Macron initially called for a halt to arms shipments to Israel for use in Gaza before his office changed their mind and affirmed continuing arms shipments. What happened? To be fair, I missed the other part. So again, it's not surprising. I thought he was a bit serious. But anyway, we had a response from Netanyahu who was really angry. I'll show it to you in a sec. Speaking to French broadcaster France Inter on Sunday, Macron said finding a political solution to Israel's nearly year-long war in Gaza is a priority, and that an arms embargo should be key part of these efforts. He added that Paris has already stopped its arms deliveries to Israel. However, France will continue to provide what it called defensive equipment to Israel. They defend themselves, primarily for missile defense. According to a report from French television station BFM TV, citing the presidential palace after the interview. I think we are not being heard, Macron said, really, as if they listened to the United States. They just want what they want from you and they spit on you. Why does Israel not have a defense pact with the United States? Has anyone asked that question? If you are so strategically tied with the US and you rely on them, and why don't you have a defense pact with them? Because they don't want to share everything that they want to do with them. They want to get everything they want from the US administration and not have to notify them about anything they do, and still get supported, and get the cover that they need. He continued, I think we're not being heard, Macron said, referring to Israel's continuing assault on Gaza, which has killed almost 42,000 people, despite repeated calls for a ceasefire. I think it's a mistake, including for the security of Israel. Of course, you're going to have to be worried about Israel, not the people being slaughtered. Later that evening, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded in a recorded statement saying, shame on them. Okay, hold on, you need to see this before we can't just quote Netanyahu, we need to see Netanyahu. Yeah, Netanyahu, ya Bibi. Okay. You're going to find this funny. All right. Here we go.
I have a message. I have a message for President Macron. Today, Israel is defending itself on 7 fronts against the enemies of civilization. We're fighting in Gaza against Hamas, those savages who murdered, raped, beheaded, and burned our people on October 7th. We're fighting in Lebanon against Hezbollah, the most heavily armed terror organization in the world, which was planning an even greater massacre than October 7th on our northern border, and that has rocketed Israeli towns and cities for nearly a year. We're fighting against the Houthis in Yemen and the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria that together have launched hundreds of drones and missile attacks against Israel. We're fighting against terrorists in Judea and Samaria who are trying to murder civilians in the heart of our cities. And we're fighting against Iran, which last week fired over 200 ballistic missiles directly at Israel, and which stands behind the 7-front war against Israel. As Israel fights the forces of barbarism led by Iran, all civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side. Yet President Macron and some other Western leaders are now calling for an arms embargo against Israel. Shame on them. Is Iran imposing an arms embargo on Hezbollah, on the Houthis, on Hamas, and on its other proxies? Of course not. The axis of terror stands together. But countries who supposedly oppose this terror axis call for an arms embargo on Israel. What a disgrace. Well, let me tell you this. Israel will win with or without their support, but their shame will continue long after the war is won. For in defending ourselves against this barbarism, Israel is defending civilizations against those who seek to impose a dark age of fanaticism on all of us. Rest assured, Israel will fight until the battle is won, for our sake and for the sake of the peace and security of the entire world.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Benjamin Netanyahu is protecting the civilization and he's protecting the security of the world by doing this to Iran. And how dare Emmanuel Macron even consider such a thing? But we haven't finished the article yet. We're going to have to go back to the article and see what they continued, because apparently he did a U-turn. What did they threaten him with an Epstein video or something? Is he part of the network as well? Okay. Here we go. They spoke about Netanyahu, the disgrace, of course, and there's a diplomatic path. There's a diplomatic path. At this moment, show leadership and responsibility. It's the moment to show leadership and responsibility. Your activity in the north is pushing the region to war, Macron told Netanyahu. Instead of putting pressure on us, it's time for you to put pressure on Hezbollah. He responded. Netanyahu responded to him. Despite Macron's assurances, this is the clarifying point, that France has halted its weapon sales to Israel, rights groups and investigative media have criticized the lack of transparency surrounding the issue. According to a Defense Ministry report, to Parliament obtained by French media outlet Mediapart, France delivered 30 million euros worth of military equipment to Israel in 2023. However, since the report does not specify the months, media reports said that it is impossible to determine whether these deliveries continued after Israel's offensive on Gaza. Israel's offensive on Gaza began on 7th of October, adding that the Ministry of Armed Forces was unable to clarify the matters. Well, to be fair, according to that article, I'm not seeing that he backtracked on what he said. If it's rights groups, not and they're entitled to, and that's their job, of course, to dig in and make sure that it's implemented. But I didn't see him backtracking. So, and anyway, Benjamin Netanyahu had this rant. And if Benjamin Netanyahu has a rant, that means there's something going on. Again, good progress, but not enough and late. And the typical, Western leadership responses, Firstly, the justification. And to this day, they whitewash. And any criticism is, so, humble. And it's like they're afraid to speak a direct, frank sentence to Israel. But, okay, cool, continue. Like the UK, they stopped the licenses of about 30 weapons that they considered aggressive. And then they said, okay, just defensive. What do you mean defensive? You're talking about a genocidal entity committing war crimes. You shouldn't be able to defend. It's like sending missiles to Russia to defend themselves. Why don't you do that with Russia then? Why don't you say, okay, we won't support you in aggressive weapons against Ukraine, but we'll send you these things to defend yourself from the Ukrainian attacks. No, they arm Ukraine and oppose and sanction Russia. And if they wanted to be morally consistent and take the same approach with every country, they would be supporting the Palestinian resistance now and all of the resistance fronts against Israel and banning Israel from everything and sanctions on Israel and embargo, let alone probably a military intervention. But if you want to compare it to what they're doing in Russia, at least support the small little resistance, the occupied people suffering and genocide for all of their life. And against this criminal state by international law. No, not by Mahmoud's law or anything. No, by international law. If you believe and have any regard to international law, any progress is good. But again, nothing is enough. Nothing is stopping him. And again, the United States is telling him, you can count on one thing, you have our back. Nothing means anything. Any criticism to Netanyahu wouldn't mean a thing when it comes to threats or, asking them to, de-escalate and. All right. This is when it comes to Israel and the potential attack on Iran. It's looking like it's potentially imminent, but Iran is still sticking to their guns. And we had an Iranian official telling Al Jazeera today that the paths for de-escalation and attempts to prevent regional war are met with Israeli insanity, keen on bloodshed. Washington is neither interested nor serious in applying pressure on Israel to stop its escalation and bloodshed. Israel seeks to position itself as the leader of the Middle East, and that won't happen. Netanyahu's talk about changing the Middle East is delusional arrogance and is destined to fail. That is, of course, when it comes to the United States position, the Iranians are seeing it clearly, like the Russians are seeing it, like any sane person reading things is seeing it. The United States is behind all of this. It's the extension, it's a state belonging to the US here in the Middle East called Israel. And it's acting with full United States administration support. They're going to Israel. They're arming them with whatever they need. They know about many of the planned attacks. Israel probably keeps certain things secret from the United States administration. But when it comes to such a large-scale attack that could completely throw the whole region into flames and potentially ignite the final, the final ignition, basically, or fire to World War III, but that's what they're doing. And they're continuing down that path. That's when it comes to Iran. Another important thing here, and signs that we're seeing that Iran is indeed preparing to an Israeli attack, is the fact that a website called Tanker Trackers. They said that Iranian oil trackers disappeared from a main oil export location based in Kharg Island or Kharg Island in Persian, which is an island belonging to Iran in the Gulf region. The tankers were empty, according to that tracking website, but apparently moved as precaution to an upcoming Israeli strike. The oil loading is still being carried out, so they can come and load if they need to, and the production is still there, but the move is precautionary. The move is precautionary because they are anticipating an Israeli strike. So it's likely to happen. If it happens, expect an immediate Iranian response, and don't expect it to be easy. Don't expect it to be easy because Iran has S-300, potentially S-400 too. They also have their own versions, improved versions of S-300s. They recently destroyed lots of the Israeli Air Force and one of the biggest radars in the Israeli bases, and they have defense. And if Israel is planning to attack their nuclear project is distributed amongst dozens of locations. And you're talking about mountainous locations deep within it. They haven't made the same mistake that Iraq and Syria did by having a location in one single point, and they distributed it to protect it as much as possible. It's not going to be an easy ride. But again, of course, you cannot underestimate the Israeli capability, and you cannot underestimate the fact that they are being supported by the United States. However, whatever it is, and it appears that this time they will be keen on doing something very big because the hit was very big. We didn't have anywhere near the interception rates that they had in the first attack, although the intended missiles in April landed where they were meant to land. This time, most of the missiles landed, the supersonic, the hypersonic missiles, and Israel clearly wants to show who's boss. We're looking at a war of extermination. We are looking at something that is only going to get bigger. And there are no indications, there is not one hopeful sign that anything can be stopped. If you would have had a hopeful sign, it would have come primarily from the United States administration having a direct approach with Israel. No, you're not attacking in Iran. Once and for all, stop this rabid genocidal entity from continuing and expanding the war. And are the American talks sincere when they talk about the fact that they don't want to escalate? They're not sincere. Well, we have no reason to believe that the American administration is sincere. And de-escalation is required, and a peace process is required, and stopping the war is required. But you have a side that has been not only historically oppressing, but continuing a recent genocide and expanding it further to take the whole region and potentially the whole world into a global war. And apart from the defense of Iran is of course ready with attack, and the next attack on Israel will be annihilating Israel. It will be annihilating their oil industry. It will be attacking power plants. It will be destroying infrastructure, and expect more things to be destroyed in Israel. Do not underestimate it. And one thing that's very important here, by the way, for everyone to know, we still, since the beginning of this war on the 7th of October and following the Israeli genocide, we still haven't seen a full unity of fronts in a coordinated, intense attack on Israel. In the beginning of this war, I spoke about a scenario of 20,000 missiles landing on Israel all at once. It's a very possible scenario, coming from Iraq, coming from Lebanon, coming from Iran, and coming from Yemen. But if we only want to take Iran and Hezbollah, by the way, we still haven't seen that. If that scenario gets implemented, that's it. Israel had no answer to Iranian missiles flying over 1,000 miles. Now imagine them being bombarded with thousands of missiles from Hezbollah in Lebanon, potentially more from Yemen and Iraq. And then Iran landing their hypersonic missiles that Israel has no answer to. They have no answer to it. They didn't have an answer with Arrow 3, which is supposed to be the most advanced anti-missile weapon system in the world. Exo-atmospheric, hypersonic, couldn't touch Iran. So things will be burning completely in Israel, but it looks like Benjamin Netanyahu is leading us towards that direction, which leads me to Lebanon, and then I'll open the space up for all of you. In Lebanon, Israel is claiming that they killed Hashim Safiyuddin, Sayyid Hashim Safiyuddin, the person who was the leader of the executive body of Hezbollah and was potentially due to replace Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah after his martyrdom. They landed over 70 bombs, according to certain reports. And what they're doing now is they're preventing any medical teams from reaching the area. So if any civilian there is needing any sort of help or whatever, they will be dying because they need help and they're not getting the help. They're using the same crooked and barbaric strategies that they've used in Gaza on Lebanon. It's all out. And they're trying to portray an image of victory in Lebanon. They're showing these videos with tunnels, showing them in certain locations that are just a few hundred meters from the borders after suffering tremendous losses in these areas, acting like there is a really good progress in Lebanon and we're getting there. And when the fact of the matter is, yesterday, there was sirens next to Benjamin Netanyahu's house in Caesarea. Reports that Hezbollah launched missiles in that area. And what are we having in the past several days? We have an average of 200 missiles stretching from North Israel, covering up to a third of the whole state of Israel. So Hezbollah's day-to-day, and again, the bare minimum, they're doing the bare minimum, is 200 missiles a day. What does that mean? The maximum of the previous period following the Israeli escalation is now the bare daily minimum, the bare minimum on a day-to-day basis. Has Netanyahu achieved? Is he looking to, are there any prospects for him to achieve his desires and his objectives of bringing the people back to the north? No. It's increasing things further. It's putting more Israelis in the firing. And don't even ask anyone about the Israelis who are kidnapped in Gaza. Don't ask about them. Today we started to have a bit more protests in Israel. More people are talking and, protesting, but nowhere near the big protests that we had before. However, they're seeing the lies. They're seeing the lies of Benjamin Netanyahu, and they're seeing the fact that this man is a big liar. He's putting more Israelis in danger, killing more people, and now threatening the whole region with a war, with a massive war in the Middle East that could potentially escalate. We are indeed looking at very, very intense several days, in particular 24 to 48 hours, in accordance to multiple reports from Israel and from outside of Israel. We've had this attack on a near Russian base in Syria, and we had reports about Syria deploying more Russia. It was a Russian base in Syria, and now we have reports that Russia is deploying more forces in the Golan Heights to prepare for something bigger. And the US is, reassuring Israel, you can count on us. You have our back. It's looking like we are heading towards an escalation, and the next couple of days will show exactly where things are. And let me open the space up for all of you. Everyone can start participating now if you wouldn't mind highlighting your comments, just to make them visible for me. And of course, apologies in advance if I'm get to all of the comments in the live stream, but we'll take as much as possible. And before I begin, Sour Vodka, Ralph HUW, Stephen Burrows, Michael McIntyre, Windy Melly, Marvin Vergus, Kev75, Omar Zagmut Gahbar, and Lutfi Shhadi. Thank you very much for your super thanks. Let's go to Fatima saying flights from Tel Aviv to NYC are fully booked. Well, hardly anyone is trying any flights now from Israel. The situation is very bad, and there is a sense of paranoia in the state, and the tensions that Benjamin Netanyahu is constantly escalating are not reassuring anyone. They're not reassuring the Israelis first and foremost. Again, and it's important to talk about the Israelis. Why? Because he is acting like he is, doing everything for the interest of the Israelis. The fact of the matter is, you haven't been able to return the Israelis who were taken out of their homes and evacuated following the 7th of October, and the participation of Hezbollah from the areas surrounding Gaza and from the most northern areas in Israel to their homes 1 year in. What makes you think that an escalation will bring any hope to bring them back? There is no hope. There is no hope. Israelis are in hotels, the area surrounding Gaza, and you talk about over 120,000 people and 80,000 in the north. That's in the initial phase. Now, they're probably not calculating now. Paul Ambrose, Mahmoud, I think Hezi should go full out, otherwise Beirut becomes Gaza. Do you agree? Well, listen, I'm in no position to, advise, of course, any of these people what they should do. I think, based on my reading from their participation from the beginning up until now, they are very calculated. They are declaring that they are doing the bare minimum for their own reasons. I don't know their reasons, but I think that what we haven't seen, but we could see again in due course, is the all-front big attack at some point that we haven't seen, both from Hezbollah and Iran and potentially other countries too. And don't forget, Israel is now threatening. When Netanyahu said, the blessing versus the curse, all of the countries that he doesn't like, the curse, he will be attacking there. So far, where is Israel attacking? Israel is attacking Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iraq, and in Iran. They haven't started attacking these places. I mean, apart from Yemen, I don't recall an Israeli attack before the 7th of October, at least recently. They've been attacking these places before the 7th of October. Have been attacking. But now they're threatening to intensify the attacks. And again, when you talk about Iraq, and what does the US think about it? What do they think of their troops in these bases? That will be done. These bases will be destroyed, by the way. We just had a couple of attacks in the last few weeks after the escalation coming from Israel. What's going to happen to them? So they could be delaying that. And again, it could be a tactic. And they are clearly preparing for a very, very long war with Israel. And again, 200 missiles a day. That's not something to undermine. It's enough to disable Israel. Israel's economy is in ruins. Israel's production is in ruins. Everything is in ruins in Israel. So it's not like what they're doing is not intense, but I think that they are reserving something bigger potentially for later on. Again, for reasons that are unknown to me, really. Cookie Dough saying, what is the analysis about the Russian intervention? Did they bring back home their citizens? Well, Israel has many Russians, of course. Following the fall of the Soviet Union, they had a deal with the Soviet Union. Apparently, following Israel selling certain information about the US to Russia at the time, reports again, but over 1 million Russians came. from the previous Soviet Union. So Russians, Ukrainians, or these ex-Soviet Union states. Now you have about 1.5 million. And Putin, the Russian government, basically, they told them, get out of Israel so long as there's an opportunity to get out. This is a threatening tone. This is not, we advise you to leave because things might escalate. Get out so long as there's an option to, meaning there's probably not going to be an option for you to leave soon. And again, Russia's clear when it comes to its support for Iran now. In Syria, they coordinate with Hezbollah against Israel, the US, and their proxies, and their Arab and Muslim proxies too. So you're talking about preparation from Russia. I have no clue when it comes to the numbers. All we know is that the airports are full. You can hardly have anything booked. But I'm sure many people would be going to many countries before something really big happens. And it's looking like it's going to be very soon. And thank you everyone else for your participation, by the way, and all of your comments. Saig Fishlin, are you concerned that Israel has infected Iran's nuclear facilities with malicious software such as they do with Stuxnet and Flame? Well, we haven't had a report that they were infected as of recent. I'm sure the Iranians put in certain measures to counter that after these attacks. But what I do know is that Benjamin Netanyahu has a very big appetite to attack Iran's nuclear facilities, and so is the United States. These countries are reckless countries. The United States administration and in Israel, you're talking about total recklessness, miscalculation. You talk about mass terror. This is what they're doing in the Middle East, supported by the United States fully and some countries too. If you want to go and attack Iran's nuclear, imagine they make it appear to be acceptable when it comes to an Arab or Muslim country or an anti-US hegemony country across the world. Why? It's banned on an Arab or a Muslim country to have nuclear weapon. Why? And would you have the same relaxed approach if a country threatened a European nation to attack their nuclear facilities or your facilities in the US? What is this double standard and hypocrisy and arrogance and supremacy? You have nothing to do with the Iranian nuclear project. They are entitled to have a nuclear project. We, of course, hope for the day where we don't have any nuclear weapons on Earth. But so long as the biggest criminals on Earth have nuclear weapons, then everyone else is entitled to have them. That's the reality. It's not a world run by morals and virtue, is it? It's run by power. It's been evident ever since, well, a very long time ago, but even more evident now. So they still want to attack them, though. It's important to highlight the hypocrisy when it comes to Iran's nuclear project. When you have Israel having a nuclear project, threatening to what? Attack other people with it. And nuclear weapons, no one inspects them and no one criticizes them. Not, oh, you have a shady nuclear project and no, nothing. They go against Iran. But I think if they dare strike Iran's nuclear power plants, and if they are capable as well, because don't forget, you have an issue, you have the air defenses in Iran, it will be hell. It will be hell in Israel. And they constantly want to prove that they are not taken aback by Iran, and that's it, we are attacked, we attack them back. They want to attack and continue to attack and commit genocides and all of these crimes without repercussions. This is the message that Israel is sending, and everyone backing them and condemning the other side, by the way. Condemning the other side opposing to Israel is just as evil as supporting Israel. Let me tell you that. So even from day one, the moment anyone condemns anyone defending themselves against this aggression coming from Israel and the US that's been there for decades, it's nothing new. It's just as supporting Israel. So don't act like you are supporting these people, but you condemn what they do. And many people fall into this trap, including people who act like they are, supportive, of people's rights but they again want them to be stripped of any power to fight their oppressors. And I hope that elaborates. Shambili official, why is Netanyahu killing anyone who agrees to a ceasefire? Nasrallah, and why is America lying about ongoing ceasefire? It is a stalling tactic to take as much land as possible. The United States has a plan for the Middle East. They've had a vision for a new Middle East for a very long time. Now it's their opportunity to implement that plan. What is their version of the new Middle East? Fully controlled by Israel, and every person in the region, every government, every Arab and Muslim and Christian and Jew opposing this death cult under their boot. This is what they want. So that Israel is the strongest nation in the Middle East. They dictate what happens and no one dares lift a finger at them from moving forward. This is the vision of the United States. And all of this talk about a potential ceasefire, about a potential agreement, about hopefulness and whatever is just theater. The United States is supporting Israel with whatever it takes, and that's what matters. If you genuinely want to reach a ceasefire and de-escalate, you stop supporting a genocidal criminal entity and you start supporting the opposing side, fighting for their just cause and liberty and equality. That's something that the United States is not doing at all. They are supporting Israel's plan fully, although they have plans for the day after Israel. But they're trying to use Israel as much as possible at the expense of a big war that could be killing many people in the region. Infinite content, do you think Egypt will close the Suez in response to an attack from the Zionist state? If Israel attacks them? Well, it would really depend on certain things, the scale of the attack, where that attack is, who's participating with them. But they will have certain considerations when it comes to the Suez Canal, again, unless Israel threatens it, because it doesn't just depend on Egypt nor Israel, the Suez Canal. But Egypt does have leverage, it does have power, it has a powerful army. They have a good potential for a good response against Israel. But I don't think, although this is part of the plan, that this is an immediate priority in the very short to medium range time. I don't think they would want to open and start escalating with Egypt now. I think that they want to finish everything off. Well, either finish everything off or continue running forward, because this is what Netanyahu is doing. Well, he failed in Gaza. Did he finish Gaza and go to Lebanon? This is the thing here. He went to Lebanon, he had this escalation when he was humiliated in Gaza and hasn't achieved one of his objectives. None of his objectives has been achieved in Gaza. Neither declared nor non-declared. Okay, if he had a non-declared objective of completely destroy Gaza, that's probably one objective. Declared the eliminating Hamas, make Gaza an opposed threat, getting the prisoners, none of that. The non-declared, total destruction and ethnic cleansing. Okay, destruction, you achieved destruction. Ethnic cleansing, you haven't. And he went to Lebanon. He went to Lebanon to cover up what he's doing. But again, he's doing that to drag the US. To drag the US. He wants the US eventually to be dragged in the Middle East and go and fight and die on his behalf. And we're seeing elements of that. The United States is sending troops, is deploying more people to die for the sake of a genocidal entity and a criminal entity, a criminal prime minister committing a genocide while his son is bathing in Miami. It's happening. It's not that it's not happening. And if it reaches a stage where the United States has to get in fully, they will be backing Israel. They will be backing Israel. Unless, again, they take a step back after things escalate, because the United States is like Israel, by the way. They don't take a step back until they're met with force. So up until they face something even bigger from Iran and from the other resistance fronts in the region. Sarajevo, the master of tunnel destruction, Iran, has many self-sufficient small cities that are at least 100 meters granite underground. Nobody can damage them. Everything is PR. Yeah, they've prepared themselves very well from a very long time. In particular, after the US invasion to Afghanistan and Iraq, they knew that they cannot be exposed to these attacks. So they prepared themselves very well. Again, it's not like they cannot be attacked and cannot be hurt. They can, but this complete destruction thing, yeah, you know, it's not necessarily how it's portrayed to be. And Harriet, thank you so much for that, and everyone else who sent supers, much appreciated. Liba the Great, forgive me if you've answered it before. What do you make of Lebanese FM's claim that Nasrallah had agreed to a truce from US days before his assassination? Do you think it's true? Well, of course, Sayyid Nasrallah is gone now, so no one can verify that claim. However, the contents of such a truce or a temporary ceasefire, if they included Gaza, they could be correct. If they did not include Gaza, they will not be correct and they would be outright lies. And the one that I read included Gaza. Why? Because Hezbollah said we will not cut our tie with Gaza, as in we can have a ceasefire on our own with Israel without having a ceasefire with Gaza. So including Gaza means, okay, we're fine, but only for 21 days. And if you extend that with Gaza, we will have a ceasefire too. It makes sense. It could have been possible because, listen, you know, these people opposing Israel, they are not war seekers, by the way. They are seekers of rights, and they don't want an escalation, and they don't want everything to go all out. And they called on Israel several times, and they participated in it, well, at least from the Palestinian side, to have a ceasefire. And you saw who was the person who was constantly denying and rejecting the ceasefire and hindering the progress of a ceasefire, putting everyone's lives at risk in the process, Israelis, Palestinians, and everyone else. Netanyahu. So it could be, and again, is it abnormal from Israel to go and do that? No. They killed Haniya after they agreed. He agreed to a ceasefire, and they were apparently in the last minute talks to have a genuine ceasefire. They went and killed him. They're looking to escalate. They want to escalate. That's why they do all of that. So people who don't understand that it's an all-out war of extermination from Israel against the whole region and everyone who opposes them in the world, they said, we can target everyone in the world. We can attack anywhere in the Middle East. Yet none of these statements are considered to be sufficient enough to be like plastered next to the statement, a terror state threatening the world and global risk, every single day on the headlines. They're being enabled. And again, even if you look at the US, the UK, if Israel kills some of their citizens sympathizing with Gaza, they will support Israel. Look at the level. Look at the level of treatment that they receive. So they are escalating. Even if they tell you tomorrow that we might want to have a ceasefire or whatever, I wouldn't believe it personally because we've been there way too many times. Okay, we had one temporary ceasefire once only 10 months ago. That didn't happen again. Bob Marston, thank you. He said, Mahmoud, have you heard anything about Israel taking over Beirut airport control tower and denying Iranian aircraft access to the Lebanese airspace? Not taking over the control, but they had threatened them, and they did force an Iranian plane previously to go back on its tracks. And they told the Lebanese, you cannot allow any Iranian plane into the Lebanese soil. But the Iranian foreign minister visited yesterday or the day before, challenging Israel. They said, we'll bomb and we'll this and that. He came and he landed and he went down and he said, we support Hezbollah and we support the government and the Lebanese people and the resistance, and we will continue supporting them. And he went back. So they did not do anything with that. But they declared that they are imposing a military blockade on Lebanon. So again, you're talking about the whole of Lebanon. You're not just talking about Hezbollah. They just use these movements as fronts and stuff for their expansionist project. Don't forget what he used to say about Gaza before. A limited ground invasion. We're just going to kick them off of the north and we just want to this and that. Bang, 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 expand up until they put them on the Rafah borders with Egypt. But then, of course, they were met with fierce opposition from Egypt, with the ethnic cleansing campaign. Buffon is saying, what do you think? Will there be operations originating from within Israel by the Axis? Well, they had this thing that happened simultaneously or just before the Iranian missile attack. That clearly shows you. And then Hamas said that they did it, their military wing. So they clearly can still have certain operations from within. And again, that's due to how long this lasted. So that's an option. But I think the bigger threat that will be coming is from an outside attack. And Tristan, thank you so much for that. Much appreciated. Thank you for your input. And Matlas, thank you. He said Muhammad Marandi had an interview today where he mentioned that we are underestimating the contribution that Iraqi resistance will play if Iran is attacked. I'm not sure who is he referring to. I'm not underestimating it. Some people are probably underestimating it. But he's right. You know, it should not be underestimated. It should not be underestimated because so far they haven't shown their full capabilities and they can play a very big role. And that's why Israel is threatening them. That's why Israel wouldn't threaten someone unless they have done something really big. And Iraq has proven to be a very significant front because although they stopped heavily attacking American bases after the initial phase where they had attacks on American bases in Iraq, but then there was clearly some sort of an understanding between the Americans and the Iranians when it comes to Iraq. They still attacked Israel and they attacked strategic places in Israel. Perceived reality. Hi, Mahmoud, do you think the UN should vote on is Israel a terrorist state, indiscriminate attacks against civilians, pager attacks, and many more violations of international law? I think, you know, the main problem is the UN as an organization. It's proved to be an organization that is inefficient, that does not have enforcement, and that has resolutions and laws. If you talk about its judicial organ, the ICJ, that do nothing but have statements. And resolutions. Everything is ink on paper, all babble, talk, no action. As a Palestinian, I've known that ever since, really. I was aware to it because you always had resolutions for the Palestinian people. It was always a hypocritical organization that was ineffective. But now more than ever is the need to either completely, the UN as an organization really should be looked into, either just take it down completely. It really does not represent the world. It's the front of the United States. The United States and a couple of other supremacist countries act like they are the international community and use the United Nations as a front. And they can veto whatever they like, do whatever they like. It does not implement core principles, core resolutions when it comes to nations who are most in need. Western leaders threatened the ICC prosecutor, told them that international law is for, Africa and thugs like Putin, meaning it's not for us in the enlightened West, it's for these people with backward cultures and backward whatever it is. So again, you're seeing the rise of BRICS. We should have something that is more, representative of the world and the reality that we're seeing starting to take place, which is a multipolar world, not a hegemony by the United States of America. And the UN, again, you're talking about the continuation of the League of Nations post-World War II formations. Those days are gone now. The power levels changed. People are aware to the reality and what's happening. And even with all of that, Israel still disregards this organization and behaves like it doesn't exist. So what's the point? So even if they did have a vote, what is that going to do? The ICJ, which is the judicial organ of the UN, said Israel is committing a genocide and must stop this genocide immediately. Have they stopped? We're 8 months on now, with more than double the people killed after this ruling. What did the ruling do? Yes, strip a bit of legitimacy and it's not like, we're undermining everything there. But from day one, it's not going to do anything to stop the murder of the people. Why? Because there's no enforcement. And so long as there's no enforcement, and again, international law is great. You should have international law. I said it many times. If UN resolutions and this international law was implemented, we would have been in almost in utopia. Implementing the United Nations Declaration of Universal Human Rights. What a beautiful declaration. Implementing resolutions to do with people's rights for independence and sovereignty and equality and. None of it is implemented. So either you should have an enforcement tool that isn't dictated by one state, or really and truly just dismantle the whole thing and come up with something new and implement actual international law, not just talk about international law. And I hope that elaborates. That was from Perceived Reality. Thank you very much for that. Let's see what else we have. Arzu, I live in the States. We don't have money to house the homeless or pay for healthcare. The only people that support the Zionists are the Masonic Christians. Well, I mean, you have the government supporting them. You definitely have element within Christianity who support them. And you have the Zionist lobby in the US. But when it comes to money, absolutely. They don't have money for the homeless or for healthcare or for anything. But they have billion. Hell, now they're getting criticism for lack of support for the people who suffer from the hurricane. And we had people posting these jokes like, if you called this area Israel, they would have probably supported them, giving them like $700 or something. When they had, and you talk about American people, it shows you what's the priority. Scrapper, do you think the US will pull the rug from under Israelis and let them crash and burn without helping them? Wishful thinking. Listen, that's not wishful thinking. That's actually an interesting thinking. I thought that I was thinking along the lines of, would the US pull the rug? But there are many answers to that. Number one, I am 100% confident that the United States has plans for the day after Israel. The day after Israel, meaning the day after this Zionist apartheid entity ends. They have a plan. And that plan is probably evil, by the way. It's probably not good. Because anyone who supported evil for this long will have plans for further evil. That's why if Israel and Zionism end tomorrow, you will still have a problem from the United States administration trying to put something even more dangerous. So beware. Secondly, help them crash and burn. Well, Israel has been saying that they have been fighting for their life and their existence and their sovereignty, and it's an existential threat, existential war. The United States has been helping them, but only helping them mainly by sending them money and weapons. They did not fight on their behalf, meaning they probably can let them die at some point. However, in the process of them dying, because this is a process of Zionist apartheid Israel dying, let it be very clear. The United States is benefiting, not the United States as a country, the elite who are benefiting from the war, the warlords, the big warlords in the government, the big warlords in the military-industrial complex, and the war economy, the people who run the war economy in the United States. So to them, okay, I have a dying body, but let me inject as much, weapons as possible because I'm getting so much money, right? It's like a crooked, corrupt, like healthcare organization, knowing that a certain person is dead basically if I lift the support of him, but trying to convince his family who are multimillionaires that, look, give me some more money, I can potentially make him live. The difference with the other example is you're not talking about millions, talking about theft. The theft is from the American people, taxpayers' money. But again, people are very much manipulated and ill-informed in general when it comes to how the tax system operates in the United States, including foreign aid, including the Federal Reserve that is controlled by private companies, private people, right? It's not controlled by the state. And they're making money in the process of the death of Israel. So they'll probably let the dying process be long, and make more and more money out of it. But they have plans. They have plans for the day after. Don't underestimate the CIA. They, should you not think they know these people? What's happening? Sour vodka on up this well, no confirmation that he's gone, no information that he's alive. Some reports said that they cut the connection with him. There's no connection with him in Lebanon, non-Hezbollah sources. We know that Israel is preventing any medical aid from reaching that area, meaning if there is anyone harmed, whether him or I or anyone else that's assuming that he is even there, that they will be dying of injuries and, being under the rubble. But we don't have a confirmation yet. The one who cares, what do you think the war turns out like in the coming days? Jazakallah khair wa iyyakum. I think Israel is planning a very imminent attack on Iran that will be supported by the United States. It could be or will be, I'm not in a position to say will, but it's likely to be a really heavy blow. When I say imminent, then I think we're looking at 24 to 48 hours potentially, because all of the preparations are in place. Israel is also being very wary about the next coming days, because it'll be the first commemoration of the 7th of October. And they are potentially planning to kind of hit the head of the snake, right, as they call Iran, with a big blow. Why? Because to them, and Netanyahu saying that, they said Iran is behind all of this and it's time to end it. So you need to understand the tone that we're talking about. You could have a delay, but there are many indications that this is, pretty imminent. Again, because don't forget how quickly Iran responded after the assassination of Sayyid Nasrallah. And Jane, thank you so much for that, and everyone sending supers. I'm sorry if I missed some of you, by the way. I'll get to all of you, of course, in the end as well, but we will see during the progress of the live stream. And Claire as well, thank you so much for your participation and comment. Gullyberg saying, Mahmoud, how do you see the Zionists conducting their attacks? Will they use missile launches or long trips with fuel refueling in the air? Well, based on the talk that we had, it doesn't look like it's going to be something that super extraordinary, meaning something along the lines of Air Force being involved and an attack on certain locations, maybe sending some drones or what have you. Unless, that is, they have an infiltration in Iran that is at the scale of the infiltration, or whatever you want to call it, that they had with Hezbollah in Lebanon, where they will be carrying out a big attack to do with technology or to do with infiltration of certain figures or. Now, from what we've seen so far, it looks like they want to have a blow that will be very visible. Israel wants to create a theater. Like in Yemen, they attacked Al-Hudaydah and you see the fire coming out. So they want that to happen. What can cause that? Oil. So they will probably attack oil facilities. With regards to the nuclear, I'm not sure they will go there. Again, they were trying to justify the lack of attacking the oil or doing something that might be connected to the oil, but not to a scale where it will annoy Iran so much. And again, will they admit it's them or not? Because if they admit and say and do it outright and not do a backward firework attack like they responded in April, where they did not take responsibility and Iran didn't have to do anything afterwards because it was insignificant, well, you're going to be faced with an immediate response. It's as if they are seeing their death sentence and they are going to it. Difficult to comprehend. You saw a country that is serious, that Iran. They are serious, they are calculated, they are wise, they are peace-seeking, but they don't bow down. They're not slaves like many of the countries in the region. And they attacked you, and they hurt you, and they told you it ended, and it's a response, not an initiation. Don't forget that. And you still go and escalate after they retaliated to your aggression, constant aggression against them. Do you realize that? And that's a typical trait of Israel that is being babied by the United States and many Western countries. arrogant, entitled, violent, and expansionist. Iran doesn't take that. They don't bow down. Iran acts as an independent sovereign state. And they are a country that cares about its honor and about human rights. And they are not a selfish country. They're selfless in many ways, sacrificing many things for the sake of causes they genuinely believe in to support oppressed people, like now with the Palestinian case. And that applies to the other resistance fronts too. But we're talking about Iran because it's the only official all throughout state. Because in the case of Iraq, it's the resistance movements. Lebanon, it's Hezbollah and other resistance movements. In Yemen, it's the government that is not the officially recognized government of Yemen. So it will not be easy because there's refueling, because they need to think about it strategically. Are they going to go above the Arab states? And will the Arab states allow them? And if the Arab states allow them, primarily Jordan, if we talk about Jordan, will they intercept them? Because Jordan said, we will intercept anything coming either from Iran or from Israel on top of our airspace. Are they going to be true to their word, or are they going to go through Saudi Arabia? And if they do, will Iran not know? They will know. That means this country is a participant and they will be in danger. But this is the path that Israel will most likely take. Let me try and get a map up for you to explain further what they could do and what the route of the attack could be. So if we look at this here, this is the Middle East map, right? Hold on a second. Let me try and get something a little bit bigger. Because this was the route that Israel was using let's go to Google Maps, easiest thing. They will be taking a path that is most likely coming from Syria and Iraq. I will show you this for just 1 second here. Having a bit of an issue with this map. Okay. Look at this here. So they will be going taking this route, going to Syria down this way, right? Either all the way up to the north, east, and coming through Iraq here and then attacking, or trying to go through Syria, a central part, and then going to Iran. Because if they want to go through, of course, Jordan or Saudi Arabia, then they're going to be, both of these countries are going to be targets. They're going to be targets for Iran. So this was the route that they took previously, apparently, to conduct this previous attack, right, on Iran. Another option, and that's again unlikely, is to use some of their bases abroad. Some people mentioned Azerbaijan. They have very good ties with Azerbaijan, and again, not very likely, but a potential. Another option, using this option would be lethal for any hosting country, using any bases of the United States from some of the Arab countries here to conduct an attack. That's going to be suicidal for the country that allows that to happen. Or going from an aircraft carrier in the region, the US aircraft carrier in the region, and going to attack in Iran. It is not going to be a walk in the park. It isn't going to be a walk in the park for Israel. When they went to attack in Yemen, which is direct, they were over the Red Sea, no problems when it comes to countries or what have you, or territories or disputes, international waters. To them, that was a challenge. Why? Because some of them said, we were surprised that all of them went back. We didn't think that all of the fighter jets would go back. And they had to consider refueling. They had to consider many things. With Iran, it's a far bigger thing. That's why the United States had to be supporting everything. Won't be doing anything without the US. That's why the Iranians are already saying the US is in it, and they're not stopping this increased bloodshed and escalation. They know what they're talking about. Anyone who knows this knows. It's the United States. And that was from Gullyberg. Thank you so much for that. Bart van der Bigelaar, Russia is training the resistance at the moment in Syria. Yeah, they have had operations with the resistance for in Syria, and thank you very much for that, for years now. Ooh, many comments. Many comments. And Golden as well, thank you so much. Golden Sun. Mind over matter about the US stacking or sabotaging the BRICS meeting, not to that level. Not to that level. They wouldn't be. They wouldn't want to poke all of them all at once and invite something much bigger. Dr. X, thank you so much for that. I think you were referring to the beautiful words on paper should be implemented. Yes, with regards to the UN. In 1984, Israel does nothing without the knowledge of murderers. There is nothing the USA is not involved in. Teamwork by hell, yeah. You're right, 100%. And thank you so much for that. And Riza, thank you as well. You said don't ever underestimate Iran's sophisticated air defense system. No, we've been talking about it, and they have the S-300, and they have their own system. Reports that they have S-400 too, and they got the new radars from Russia. All of that is important. Matthew, is Israel also attacking Russian assets in Syria? Yes, or at least very, very nearby, like the one we spoke about a couple of days ago. After that, Russia said everyone in Israel, every Russian in Israel, get out of Israel, so long as there's an option 2, meaning a threatening tone. They have been doing that. They once tricked the Syrian air defense systems to target a Russian plane. But I was thinking it was in 2018. You're talking about they had a Russian plane with the military personnel. Israel went in one of their fighter jets next to it, so that the air defense systems in Syria can detect it. But they did something so close that the Syrian system targeted the Russian one, and the Syrians, the Russians knew what was happening. And things were going downhill from that time, because they used to coordinate a lot with Russia in Syria, by the way. Israel and Russia had really good relations before. But things started to deteriorate with time. Like Netanyahu used to always go to Russia, always meet with Putin, and he used to show a lot of importance to coordinating with him in Syria. But again, Israel, like the United States, really, escalation after escalation. And attacks and assassinations, you know. Daniel Moses Scott is saying if they go through Syria, could Syrian defense take down the aircraft? Yeah, but the thing is, because you know Syria has certain locations that, well, you have hundreds of foreign bases in Syria. And some parts are not heavily equipped when it comes to air defense systems. And some parts are controlled by America, like America has certain bases, and some parts are controlled by pro-Israeli sides in Syria, acting as if they are in the name of whatever it is they want to claim with Israel. Israel treats them, supports them, arms them, lots of stuff. So that's where Israel, you know, because they also operate in Syria and target, so they have some sort of maneuverability and familiarity with the region. And in that part of Iraq, up north, they could potentially see, for example, who positioned, if they actually do have any relevant air defense systems, depending on the altitude and what have you, then they could reach Iran. But again, it's not a walk in the park. It is not a walk in the park. And they could be planning something that would not include air defense. Again, you know, in my opinion, that's potentially a likely thing, although it's very, very complicated, and it requires a lot of effort, very dangerous, very, very risky. And they are known to conduct such mass terror operations. Like when you see an ISIS, for example, explosion in Iran, that's Israel. ISIS explosions is Israel. That's what they can do, something massive, for example, massive terror attack, put it on ISIS or whatever. But the difference here is that they said they will be responding. They will be responding, and it will be visible. And Riz as well, thank you again, said who hacked CIA drone landed in Iran, who shot down RQ-4A stealth drone? Yes. Iran, they definitely have capabilities, undeniably. Listen, if Hezbollah took down or Yemen took down some of these planes, then Iran has a lot of stuff. And again, these visits that they had from the Russians, they were there to further support them. TMZBGD, how do you personally think Israel will attack? Well, I think that they are genuinely interested in conducting a very big attack in Iran, potentially maybe from their perspective calculated, although I'm not sure they're interested in anything calculated. But they want something big, and they probably wouldn't care if it's like the last hit before an all-out war. Because really and truly now, we're in a regional war. We're in almost a completely open all-out war. But that attack will bring a bigger attack on them. Listen, that could be lethal. And I'm not like exaggerating or anything. Lethal blow. If Iran sends missiles and they destroy infrastructure and stuff in Israel, and Israel is much smaller than Iran. Israel is a tiny country. It doesn't take a lot to completely destroy infrastructure and strategic locations, what have you. What are they going to do after that? But I think Israel will potentially be doing something quite big. How likely will it to succeed? I'm not sure if they are even considering all of that, because usually when you want to attack, you will think about how protected you will be, how likely this attack is going to be. And I mean, talking about sane people, or what do you want to get out of it? What do you want to get out of it? Israel said that they want to get Iran. They were talking about a regime change, meaning they could go all out on Iran. They could go all out on them without too many calculations. But judging by what they've done in other locations, have they achieved what they wanted by this constant violence and the equivalent of 4 nuclear bombs in Gaza? 90,000 tons of TNT? No. But they're keen on doing that with Iran. Trust me, I think many Iranians are looking forward to it, because that will be the ultimate excuse to give Israel an even more explosive blow. And they calculate all of that and they consider it. To them, that will be an undeniable, large-scale attack, unconventional on infrastructure, and it will let them loose. Basically, they wouldn't be tied by anything. And to this day, they choose to be bound by international law, UN charters, everything. Even in their responses, they immediately elaborate. Unlike them criminals go and attack everywhere. And that's why Israel and the Genocide 7, the G7, that were condemning this attack, they could not claim anything legal against Iran's attack, by the way. That's why they said it constitutes to a serious escalation, not constitutes to an illegal act of, because they don't have any backing. And Iran considers that. Talk about respecting international law and whatever it is. When the other side doesn't, they play dirty constantly. And we'll take a couple of Marvin, who are the internal threats to Iran? Religious, tribal, or just CIA agents? Usually you can combine all of them. Because you'll have the ignorant sectarianism, but moved and controlled by these agents in many cases. Even if you talk about sectarianism, when did it start to pop up, by the way? We haven't had that before. I mean, I'm not sure how old some of you are, but what? In the 90s, it began in the 2000s, when they started wanting to have more interest, and when like movements like Hezbollah started to have successes, And many people started to endorse, oh, they started to bring up the sectarian things, right? Then in Iraq, they created that, and people fell into the trap, and people still fall into that sectarian trap. But they don't have as much power as they would like to portray they have. Of course, you have some Iranians who completely oppose the government, like Mujahidi Khalq, they're called, abroad, supported, of course, by the US. They have bases and stuff and what have you. And it doesn't matter if they actually commit terror and actually slaughter people. The US will support them, Israel will support them. Even though they conduct atrocities against Iranians, by the way, and have conducted before. But you can see, well, haven't you seen the images coming from Iran and how many people were in the streets supporting, all of what their country's doing and supporting Palestine, and, they're way more united and together than many people think, really. And the government in Iran, they have more support from their population than any other Western country. Show me one Western country that can get 10%, okay, if not less, of the people out in the streets in support for their government in Iran. Can you? No, you can't. Why? Because you don't really have you have elected dictatorships here. Manipulation, control, fear, instilling division and hate to bring themselves into power, and then the people can shut up and they can implement and go ahead with their policies for the next 4 years. But in Iran, no. Even if you talk about Yemen, look at how many people support them and what they do constantly. True, that's true democracy for you, a representation of the will of the people and consulting the people. So although they would like to portray as if, yeah, we have some people inside and this and that, it's not to the level that they would like to portray it. Iran is a strong and united nation. And if anything, they've shown themselves and gain more popularity now because of their brave positions when it comes to Palestine. They have done what no other country has done in the form of government, people, power, and support. And it bothers the United States primarily. It bothers any genocidal supporting country. Israel, the main genocidal country, and any of the genocide supporting countries that are nothing but really US proxies. They just follow the US dollar and might, and the United States in its attempts to protect its position as the one and only superpower in the world for the next century or so. I don't think it's going to work. And we'll end it there. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in for another live stream. Thank you for everyone who participated. And I'm really sorry that I would miss all of the comments. We'll see what's mostly highlighted and relevant to the chat. But I appreciate all of your input, and I'll hopefully, I'll be with you regularly anyway. And many thanks to everyone who participated and sent supers as well. Sour Vodka, Ralph, Stephen, Michael, Wendy, Marvin, Kev, Omar, Zagmut, Chahbar or Sabar. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Lutfi Shhadi, 1984, Sarajevo, Harriet, Frightland, Bob Marston, Mo, welcome to supporter. Tristan, Matlas, Tristan again, thank you so much. Tony Soprano and Cookie Dough, welcome to member. Jane Farris, thank you for super as well. Claire Reaper, thank you. Bart van der Bigelar, Golden Sun, Dr. X, 1984 again. Riza, triple thank you. And again, 1984, Sarajevo, thank all of you for all of your supers. chats or thanks on everything. And again, appreciate your input, and please accept my sincere apologies for not being able to follow all of them, but I'll hopefully be with you regularly. Apart from that, stay blessed. Have a nice rest of day or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. And I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone.